Where do we approve?
So it says got it. You just need to click on the prompt that's on the screen.
Where? I don't see any.
Oh, then it's all right. Then it must have got approved. Thanks.
Somebody's moving the cursor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kunal Majumdar. I am the representative of Committee to Protect Journalists in India. Welcome to the launch of CPJ's Safety Guide for Journalists covering the upcoming general elections in India. Before we delve into the guide, I want to express my gratitude to Mr. N. Ram for agreeing to deliver this evening's keynote address and to the Hindu group for their invaluable support. We are currently live streaming on the Hindu's YouTube channel. Mr. Ram has been a staunch advocate for press freedom in India and has been a dear friend of CPJ. On behalf of CPJ leadership, I express my heartfelt thanks to him for his generosity and kindness. I would also like to thank our esteemed panel, Ms. Ishani Datta Ray of Ananda Bazar Patrika, Mr. Ashish Pandey of Navbharat Times, Ms. Dhanya Rajendran of the News Minute, and my own colleague, Colin Pereira, who would be joining us shortly for agreeing to be part of this discussion. Last but not the least, I want to acknowledge the team at OIJO, led by my former editors from Tehelka and Vice, Rishi Majumdar and Pragya Tiwari. They graciously assisted me with translating the guide in 4 Indian languages and coordinating with the speakers. Pragya will also be moderating today's panel discussion. Thank you, Pragya and Rishi. Now let's get to it. I like to share the links of the guide with you first. So unlike the old times where we're not revealing any hard copy, so the guide is now available on CPJ's website in 4 Indian languages, Tamil, Hindi, Kannada, and Bangla, along with English. So allow me a few moments to share the screen and show you the English version as well as share with you the links to the other translated versions. These links will also be available under the YouTube in the YouTube description section. I will also go ahead and share the screen that shows the English version. Now, CPJ has been issuing safety advisories and guides for Indian journalists for the past 6 years, particularly around elections, both general as well as state elections. This guide is part of that endeavor to ensure that Indian journalists have proper information and knowledge regarding their own safety. Additionally, this year, we have collaborated with ACLED, Armed Conflict and Location Event Data Project, to analyze data on the general trend of violence and particularly around elections in India. Based on this data and CPJ's documentation from the past 5 years, we have developed the safety guide. The guide is broadly divided into 4 sections: a safety checklist for editors while deploying staff on a hostile story, digital safety, physical safety, and psychological safety. Now, I would request Mr. N. Ram to deliver the keynote address and share his feedback on the safety guide, as well as to discuss the larger need for a conversation, both within the journalist community, as well as at a societal level about the need for journalist safety mechanisms within newsrooms and also at the industry level. Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Kunal, and my congratulations to the Committee to Protect Journalists on these fine initiatives, including the safety kit, journalist safety kit you brought out ahead of the 2024 general elections in India. There was a time I believed and proclaimed in various forums that when it came to freedom of speech and expression, and by extension, the freedom, independence, and general state of the press, the news media in general, India was in an enviable position, certainly in relation to every other developing country. But that was 45 years ago, when the socio-political environment, and as a prominent part of it, the news media environment, seemed more open, more capacious, and more welcoming than it had been at any time anyone could recall in post-independent India. The polity seemed to be unusually open to a choice of directions and paths it might take. English language as well as Indian language daily newspapers and magazines, liberated from their enslavement and inglorious role during the emergency of 1975-1977, they seemed eager and energized to take full advantage of the new opportunities that are opened, especially for Indian language newspapers. Today, the media scene is developed far more diversified, and there are different platforms. Especially for Indian language newspapers at that point, there were opportunities for accelerated and expansion growth, a phenomenon described by the political scientist, my friend Robin Jeffrey, as India's newspaper revolution. Even more importantly, for significant sections of the media, there were opportunities for playing a more meaningful, energetic, and effective role in the striving for a democratic, progressive, and just society. It was a time most newspapers, journalists, and their representative bodies were unusually vigilant against any encroachments on their entitlements and status as the so-called fourth estate. But if I were to claim anything like that today, I would be vulnerable to the charge of purveying fake news. The safety kit put out by CPJ after meticulous preparation, after a lot of research and preparation, I think is based on a couple of things. India's experience, the experience of journalists and media organizations in the run-up to the 2019 election, general elections, and also our experience in the 5 years since then. And Kunal mentioned the basis. This is based on an analysis of the data from the Armed Conflict and Location Event Data Project, which basically reveals there's an increasing threat to journalists from physical attacks, mob violence, and violent demonstrations. There is on the digital front an escalation in social media trolling, online harassment, cyberbullying, and digital surveillance, to quote from your safety kit, the text. And something that has been emphasized more than before, these combined attacks have resulted in increasing health stress, mental distress, trauma, the effects of trauma, and so on, and what to do about it. So I think this is an extremely valuable database CPJ has drawn on. And if you read the text, the safety kit, you'll see that there was a surge in physical violence leading up to the 2019 general elections in states like West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Punjab, and Jammu and Kashmir, and so on. So I don't want to go into the details of it, but I think this is data-based. That's the first point that needs to be made. So the apprehension that there will be a risk of physical violence as well as a new kind of aggression on digital platforms, I think the apprehension is justified, which is why there's a very elaborate safety kit that has been worked out. There are several global surveys of the state of media freedom and independence in India. I don't want to go into excessive detail again, but it is clear that freedom of the media, news media, has been deteriorating around the world over the past decade, and India is very much part of this deteriorating trend. For example, in 2014, India ranked 140 among 180 countries and territories figuring in the annual World Press Freedom Index, compiled by Reporters Without Borders, RSF, a Paris-based independent organization that dedicates itself to freedom of information. In 2022, India ranked 150th out of 180. In 2023, its ranking in the RSF index slipped to 168 out of 180. And there's a new methodology here. Press freedom is defined by RSF, I think it's a handy definition, as the ability of journalists as individuals and collectives to secure, produce, and disseminate news in the public interest, independent of political, economic, legal, and social interference. And in the absence of, this needs to be emphasized, threats to their physical and mental safety. The index, if you drill down to the numbers, it's quite disturbing, because the political indicator, 169 out of 180 in 2023, economic indicator, 155 out of 180, legislative indicator, 144 out of 180, social indicator, 143 out of 180, and last and very revealing, security indicator in this index, 172 out of 180 in 2023. RSF classifies it as very serious. It's clearly, India is one of the more dangerous places in the world for doing journalism, particularly during sensitive periods like the run-up to the election and the actual polling itself. Now, the committee, CPJ, the Committee to Protect Journalists, has, after careful inquiry and strict verification, documented the work-related killing of 1,551 journalists worldwide, including 59 in India, since 1992. And of the 59 killed in India between 1992 and 2023, 42 were murdered in retribution for or to prevent news coverage or commentary. Remaining 17 lost their lives on dangerous assignments or in crossfire. And a breakdown of the subjects covered by the murdered Indian journalists is revealing. They cover the 26 who were killed for covering corruption, politics 24, crime 42. The numbers add up to more than the total because many of the targeted journalists had covered more than one subject. There's no correlation, and at least no correlation to be detected, between the murders and the governments in place in the states and at the center between 1992 and 2023. But it is significant that most of the murders were committed against journalists reporting on or investigating corruption, politics, crime, and human rights violations. However, research suggests that communal and other forms of divisive politics and social polarization across India have made the situation worse. Look at the numbers. 10 journalists were murdered across India over the decade beginning May 2004. But the 9 years beginning May 2014 have already seen the death toll rise by another 19. And it's not as though only defenseless local reporters working in remote locations have been targeted by the killers. Experienced journalists writing against communalism or investigating corruption, working for influential news media, are also part of the rising toll. There's no time to go into details here, but this is a very valuable body of research done by CPJ, and the United Nations has also taken that up. You can look up the references. Now I come to the safety kit itself. I think it's come at the right time. It's imperative and urgent to address the mounting security challenges faced by journalists in India. Because journalism has become, as the data show, increasingly risky and hazardous in the physical as well as online or digital realms. And we have to recognize and confront these challenges, work towards safeguarding the integrity and safety of journalists, but also the integrity and independence of journalism. It's a tremendous challenge. Not that everybody is at risk, but there are enough danger points, areas of vulnerability that call upon us to worry. The safety kit is a very practical document. It gives you very specific advice, or it points to resources that where you can go for deeper, more information. Editor's safety checklist, for example. There's a duty of care for editors as well as senior management. And that's brought out very clearly in the checklist given in this document, CPJ document that has been put up on the website. And on digital safety, there's very detailed advice on what should be done. I don't have to go into the details. Things like protecting against hacking by turning on two-factor authentication, keeping a copy of the backup codes, secure passwords, reviewing your accounts regularly, checking account activity regularly, guarding against phishing. Phishing is an attempt to steal sensitive information, typically in the form of usernames, passwords, credit card numbers, bank account information, and so on. And the phishers masquerade as a reputable source with an enticing request. Basic device preparedness, very, very important for digital security. Guarding against spyware. We know what happened with Pegasus. The matter is before the Supreme Court, and I'm one of the petitioners wanting the court to look into this more deeply. As NSO groups, Pegasus. Certainly, journalists in India have been targeted. There's a lot of evidence on it, but they don't admit it to the government. Internet shutdowns, increasingly frequent in some parts of the country. And last but not least, online harassment and targeted online campaigns. Women journalists have been particularly targeted, bullied, and in an obscene campaign. And again, not enough has been done to stop it or to go after the criminals who do this. These are done in an orchestrated way by groups in an organized way. And I think this has to be tackled more seriously than it's done so far. There's also very good advice on how to safeguard yourself, physical safety, when you report on rallies and protests or walk into a hostile area where there could be a hostile community. How do you need to behave in such situations? How you need to plan? How you need to plan your getaway or exit and so on? How you need to anticipate risk or trouble? There's very detailed information on this. Special attention has been paid to managing trauma in the newsroom. And I think this is going to be increasingly important. Again, drawing from research, this document, the CPJ document, shows that stories and situations that frequently result in distress include graphic images of violence, which people are exposed to, particularly television journalists or those who work on the other platforms, YouTube and so on.
It keeps asking me for a password
death,
for my
crime scenes,
HP
etc.
or CPJ thing, and then it doesn't accept it. So I've created an account for the CPJ, and it won't let me do that.
What is that? There's some interruption. Large-scale accidents, abuse cases, and so on. And there are very practical steps suggested on how to manage this trauma. Even if you can't eliminate it completely, you got to manage it, mitigate the harms and the risks, and manage this. What could be distressing? This has been underestimated in the past. The impact of this exposure to violence or distressing scenes on people's mental health, and also dealing with problems like post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and so on, which are being increasingly encountered in the newsrooms and in journalist organizations. And one of the things, sage advice is Talk about it. Don't be silent. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't bottle it up. Talk about it. Share with your colleagues. Share with your supervisor, editorial supervisors, your editors, and if required, ask for professional help to manage this. So, in sum, I think this is an important safety kit, safety guidance, if you like. Not everything applies to everybody. For example, gear, gas masks, and so on. But in particular situations, for example, Jammu and Kashmir, or in some areas in the Northeast, it could be required. So not everything applies to everybody or even generally, but it is a comprehensive document, and I commend it to journalist organizations, to the Editors Guild of India, to newsrooms, and across the industry. Finally, I just want to mention one thing, which is not really dealt with here because it was not part of the remit. The problems created by disinformation, I think they are very, very serious. We are not going to address all the disinformation out there. There are fact-check websites like Alt News and so on. But there is a very useful model in dealing with it, and I'm part of it. The BBC's Trusted News Initiative has been going on for some years now, a partnership founded by the BBC, includes media organizations like the Financial Times, like the Hindu, like the Washington Post, and so on, as well as the tech companies, get together to respond to the challenge of disinformation. Disinformation has to be differentiated from misinformation. Disinformation is deliberate, it's motivated, and it's scaled up on social media platforms. And it's a huge challenge. This safety kit does not directly address these issues, but there is a parallel here, because part of the TNA initiative is at the time of elections, you form a network across newsrooms and across the industry among willing participants. And you red flag dangerous pieces of disinformation that come out so that everybody, it's shared widely across the journalistic community and even across countries and continents. And I think this model will be very useful. So I just want to make the suggestion that there should be a concerted effort to share information related to the kind of risks and threats and dangers that the CPJ Journalist Safety Kit has brought to the fore. This information should be shared in a wide network in a cooperative way among journalists, through the Editors Guild, through journalist organizations, through media organizations, covering all the media. And I think then we'll have positive results. I have no doubt about it. I want to thank Kunal Mazumdar and the CPJ for giving me this opportunity. And of course, the Hindu is very happy to participate in it. Thank you, Kunal.
Thank you, Mr. Ram. Thank you for your insightful words. Your feedback, it will greatly be instrumental in refining some of our advisories. And I know in the past as well, you have always been very kind to give us feedback on how can we better these advisories in the coming days and years. Now, I'd like to invite Pragya Tiwari, the co-founder of OIJO and a well-known writer-journalist, to moderate the panel discussion on this critical issue. Our panel includes Ms. Ishani Datta Ray, the editor of Anand Bazar Patrika, Mr. Ashish Pandey, editor of Navbharat Times, Dhanya Rajendra, editor-in-chief of News Minute, and my colleague from CPJ and CPJ's chief safety strategist, Colin Pereira, who is joining us from Lisbon, I believe. Over to you, Pragya. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to join Mr. Ram in thanking CPJ and Kunal for this opportunity. And of course, it was invaluable to listen to your words. Privilege, honor, as always. I am delighted to be speaking with all of you, and the fact that we're having this conversation very timely, and particularly so in the lead up to the general elections that are coming up. What we got to hear about so far was some very startling statistics. But what I'm hoping to discuss over the next 30 minutes or so is what this really looks like on the ground. What does this mean in the newsroom? So the first question I'd like to ask all of you, in your experience as leaders, as journalists, as editors, is that what kind of a role does, the adage goes that charity begins at home. What kind of a role can organizational culture play in taking cognizance of the sort of challenges we have when it comes to safety? And what are the deterrents for this culture to be conducive to creating a safe environment for journalists within and organizations and on the field? If I could, I would like to start with you, Ms. Ray. Ishanidhi, if you could take the lead and join in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I would say that first of all, we need the institutional support, which ABP always gives to its reporters. And in recent times, I mean, during last 5 years, legal cases have increased against our reporters. So the legal team, we should, I mean, every institution should have very strong backup of legal team. Because last year, one of our reporters, his house was surrounded by police at wee hours. And he was, his name was called and he was asked to come out. So he had to call the legal team first. He called me and other senior reporters, and we were in a, conference over phone, and we guided him. So this kind of, attack we have been facing for the last 5 years, it has increased. So what I'm suggesting, that institutional support and a very strong legal backup is what we need most. I mean, in case of West Bengal, we need most. And another thing is, emotional support and the guidance of seniors. Whenever you are on an assignment during pre-poll or during the voting days or anything else, you need, I mean, we now have a team who are more or less are greenhorns. So we always have to guide them and caution them, about the perils and dangers on the field. Because last year, I think during the Panchayat election, one of our reporters has been, he was trapped in a building along with other reporters, and cadres of a local political party. They actually tried to set the house on fire. So the whole night we were in touch with that reporter and all other reporters, all awake, that do this and don't do this. We had to guide him, and we told him that you must be on phone. You keep your phone open, and we are in touch with him. So there are so many, circumstances now with these days that you have to guide him or her, all reporters on the field almost every day. And our state is now very famous or infamous for pre-poll and post-poll and poll violence. So we have to be cautious, extra bit every day. And that, I think, a very caring culture. Seniors should guide always, I mean, each day and every day during this election season. And again, I must say that this, institutional backup and the legal backup, that is getting more and more important in our state, I should say.
Thank you for that. Ashish, if I can come to you. If there are any thoughts that you'd like to add to what Ishanidhi has sort of beautifully put.
Yeah. नमस्कार, धन्यवाद आपका. देखिए, ये जो इलेक्शन, जनरल इलेक्शन आता है ना, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है हमारे लिए, क्योंकि ये एक ऐसा मौका होता है जब आप 5 साल बाद देश की आवाज सुनते हैं. तो ये इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं कि कौन जीत रहा है, उससे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है कि लोग पहली बार अपने को जाहिर कर रहे होते हैं. तो हम पूरे देश में अपने रिपोर्टर्स को भेज के कवर करते हैं. तो अब जो भी समाज में हो रहा है ना, वही हमारे काम में भी रिफ्लेक्ट होता है. तो अब देखिए, अगर जब रिपोर्टर बाहर ग्राउंड पे फील्ड पे जाते हैं तो समाज जितना ओपिनियटेड है, वो जितना पोलराइज्ड है, उस सिचुएशन में जाके जब वो काम करना होता है उसको, तो मुझे लगता है कि वहां हमें उनकी सेफ्टी को बहुत ही इसके लिए कॉशियस होना पड़ता है। दूसरा, डिजिटल सेफ्टी का इशू है बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट, जो अभी उठना लगा है। और मुझे बहुत ही खुशी भी हुई इस बात की कि सीपीजे ने दोनों को अपने चेक में लिया है और मेंटल सेफ्टी को भी लिया है। इन एक सेफ्टी और भी है, वो वो ये है कि देखिए, हम लोग बड़ी मीडिया ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से हैं, लेकिन देश भर में बहुत सारे हजारों लाखों जर्नलिस्ट हैं जो बहुत छोटे छोटे लेवल पे काम कर रहे हैं ग्राउंड पे। और उनकी रिपोर्ट्स ऐसी होती हैं जो वो ब्रेक करते हैं रिस्क लेके, और बड़े मीडिया हाउसेस उनको उठा के बड़ा प्ले करते हैं। लेकिन उनका जो सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज है वो है उनकी क्रेडिट सेफ्टी, कि क्या मीडिया उनको उतना क्रेडिट देता है। क्या एक जर्नलिस्ट है जो अपना जान जोखिम में डालकर एक खबर उठाई थी, क्या जब हम उसको बड़ा प्ले करें तो हम उनको क्रेडिट दे रहे हैं? दूसरा, क्या हमारे पास इंश्योरेंस कवर है, हमारी आवाज सुनी जाती है, हमारे पास एक्रेडिटेशन है, लेकिन क्या उनके पास है? तो मुझे लगता है कि ऐसे फोरम में हमें उस इशू को भी देखना चाहिए जहां जर्नलिस्ट जो हमारे ग्राउंड सोल्जर्स हैं, फ्रीलांसर हैं, छोटे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के साथ हैं, आई कार्ड तक नहीं है उनके पास। तो ये है। और दूसरा देखिए, जो मैंने पहले कहा था कि हम एक बहुत ही ट्रिगर्ड माहौल में काम कर रहे हैं, है ना, जहां लोग ओपिनियटेड भी है और मीडिया के लिए ट्रस्ट भी नहीं है। सिचुएशन ये है कि अगर कोई जर्नलिस्ट बाहर जाकर ओपिनियन लेता है तो लोग पहले ही चेक करते हैं, यार ये हमारा जैसा है कि नहीं है। तो ऐसी सिचुएशन में जब लोग जा रहे हैं तो हमें उनके साथ खड़ा होना पड़ेगा एज एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, अपने जर्नलिस्ट के साथ। उनको हमने सिखाया कि कैसे अच्छी कॉपी लिखनी है, कैसे अच्छी एडिटिंग करनी है, लेकिन हमने ये उनके भरोसे छोड़ दिया कि जब क्राउड आप पर कुछ चढ़े तो आपको क्या करना है, जब लोग आपको पेड मीडिया बोलने लगे तो आपको कैसे रिएक्ट करना है, ये कोई सिखा नहीं रहा है। मीडिया उनके साथ खड़ा हो एज एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। हम लोग फील करते हैं कि ऐसी सिचुएशन में हम अपने जर्नलिस्ट को पहले समझाएं, ऐसी सिचुएशन आए तो उसके साथ खड़े हों। और दूसरा ये कि एआई और डी फेक के टाइम पे बहुत ही ब्लर्ड लाइंस है। एक आपके जर्नलिस्ट को वीडियो मिलता है, ये वीडियो सही है या गलत है उसको जज करना है, उसको कॉम्पीट भी करना है राइवल मीडिया से, और खबर ब्रेक करनी है। तो देखिए, उसका रिएक्शन टाइम बहुत कम है। तो क्या वो जब इंफॉर्मेशन अगर वो चलाता है और बाद में ये साबित होती है कि वो गलत खबर थी, तो वो ट्रोलिंग का भी शिकार हो रहा है और उसके ऊपर गवर्नमेंट का भी प्रेशर है कि यार ये तुमने गलत इन्फॉर्मेशन चलाई। तो मुझे लगता है कि मीडिया को यहाँ अपने जर्नलिस्टों को ना थोड़ा टाइम देना पड़ेगा कि आप उसको वेरीफाई कीजिए। आप वो ब्लाइंड रेस को रोकना ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के हाथ में है, कि हम स्पीड के लिए ऐसे उनको रिस्क में तो नहीं डाल रहे हैं। दूसरा, वो ट्रोलिंग के भी डर में है, वो हैकिंग के भी डर में है। तो क्या हम अपने जर्नलिस्टों को डिजिटली सेव कर पा रहे हैं कि नहीं, डिजिटली अवेयर कर पा रहे हैं कि नहीं? और आखिरी बात ये कहूंगा, देखिए, जब हम इतनी उम्मीदें रखते हैं जर्नलिस्ट से, वो निष्पक्ष होकर काम करे, वो ग्राउंड पे जाके काम करे, वो अपनी जान जोखिम पर भी डाल के करे, तो आप ये भी सोचिए वो जर्नलिस्ट के अलावा ना एक फैमिली मेंबर भी है उसके घर में, उसका चूल्हा जल रहा है इस काम से। तो जब तक हम उसको सेफ फील नहीं कराएंगे ना, वो जाके नहीं कर पाएगा ये काम। और अगर एक जर्नलिस्ट ऑनेस्टली काम नहीं कर पाएगा तो बहुत ही सारी चीजें कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो जाएंगी। जी।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. Dhanya, I just want to, there are a couple of very key things that have come up so far. Shanidhi has brought up the need for a sort of legal backup and infrastructure. Ashishi has brought up the inequality when it comes to access to resources. He's brought up the increasing deficit, trust deficit in the media, as well as increasing polarization and the roles that they have been playing in making safety concerns more poignant in our times. Dhanya, I've known for a very long time, and you are somebody who was part of a behemoth news organization, television news organization, and then you go on to found your own independent news organization, which is of course one of the most credible and wonderful news organizations that we have in this country today. I wanted to get your perspective from both sides of this line, belonging to a sort of very institutionalized media house, and then creating this community of independent journalists that is Newsminute. So if you could come in from that perspective on safety and how safety concerns have evolved from then to now.
Hi, Pragya. Thank you. So I agree with everything which Ms. Ishani and Mr. Ashish Pandey had to say, and I think we cannot underscore this anymore, that safety of journalists should be a priority for organizations. But from what you told me, Pragya, to just talk about how it's in the mainstream media and then to a smaller news organization, I think the problem is similar in both these. One is that we are not cognizant, or we do not want to talk freely about the dangers which reporters go through when they have to go reporting outside, especially during election. I think there is this false bravado in newsrooms that reporting is anyway dangerous. Just go out and do your thing and come back. And beyond that, there are no discussions on how to do certain things, how to be safe, etc. So reporters are just asked to go. For example, mining becomes a huge issue of a topic when elections are around, right? So if we are going to send a reporter to cover that, what are the precautions to take? I can specifically tell you about digital itself. One huge problem we face is that we do not have any accreditations with any state governments or the union government. Most websites do not have. I think one state has given in India. Therefore, when we go for official events, even let's say a big rally, that there is a danger that we could be told that you do not have ID cards, so you have to move away. One thing I've noticed recently is that people stop you, they ask you which organization you belong to, they actually Google your work on the spot, and then they decide whether to talk to you, shout at you, attack you, whatever it is. We have had a very scary experience when one of my colleagues, he went to meet the Sanatan Sanstha, which was behind the Gauri Lankesh killing. When he met, the entire meeting was set up. Throughout the meeting, he would keep sending me the location of where the meeting was. I insisted that he has to meet people in a public location. It cannot be in somebody's house. It has to be in a cafe or some place where there are witnesses around. But despite that, when he reached there, the person he was supposed to meet Googled every article of this journalist and then said, I know what you're going to write. You will write like this, but here, take my version. It was a very, so when we even go to the ground now, people are more equipped to understand what is the organization that you represent, what is that you may write. They have certain notions of that. So I think all editors have to be cognizant of all these dangers, and this has to be spoken about in the newsroom. We cannot have this attitude that reporting is anyway dangerous. Just go out there and do your work and come back. And I really like that one line in the CP. I mean, I like a lot of lines, but I like this one in particular. It said, is the level of risk acceptable in comparison to the editorial gain? This is one of the lines in the CPJ guide. And I think that is very important for newsrooms to keep thinking. The editorial gain as in, I don't know the word should be editorial gain, but definitely what are the legal repercussions? What are physical repercussions? What are other repercussions? How can you make yourself safe? Sometimes collaborating with our other organizations, right? We did a story recently where we collaborated with the News Laundry. We have a set of other stories where we are collaborating with more people, because that somehow makes it much more safer for us, because we have so many more collaborators on a single story. So I think newsrooms have to devise more ways in which they can make their journalists safer.
Thank you for that, Danya. Very quickly, Colin, if you'd like to add something to this. You're part of CPJ, and your organization have been studying the way in which safety concerns manifest in different parts of the world. And I was wondering if you had anything to add in particular about how organizational culture can impact safety outcomes. Ashish ji brought up the fact that if we are not going to provide safety to journalists, how can we expect them to do honest, free work? And Dhanya said something wonderful, that this attitude that, well, it's always dangerous to report, and some wearing that as some kind of badge of honor and saying, well, go ahead, be brave, and whether or not that's commensurate with the editorial gain is a very powerful the course in so many newsrooms.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you. I mean, not to reiterate on what everyone else has said, but I think Danya's hit the nail on the head. I've been coming to India for over 20 years to study how newsrooms react to risk, and certainly, a decade ago, this sort of false bravado was ubiquitous across the entire industry, from the most junior reporter up to the owner of the newspaper or outlet. It was kind of, the risk is what it is, we just have to do it, and you really prove yourself as a journalist if you take enormous risks. What I've noticed in the last few years on our last CPJ trip around India, where we went to many newsrooms, just in the big cities, but in rural areas as well, is the junior reporters and the reporters on the beat, they have changed their minds about risk, and they want more support from their organizations, as you're hearing on this panel. I think that is a consequence of the pandemic, when so many Indian journalists lost their lives. I think they're demanding more support from their organizations. And what I would say, I think the onus is on the editorial management and the ownership of the outlets to say we're going to match that demand and keep people safe. Talking about organizational change, organizational culture, if the management don't share the same values as the reporters in the field, you will never get a substantial change. And unfortunately, what I hear whenever I come to India is young reporters saying, look, if we make a fuss, we'll lose our jobs. If we complain about safety, that's it. They're just going to promote someone else above me. So everyone keeps very quiet, and journalists are losing their lives or being injured or hurt or harassed in large numbers. And for a country like India, which is becoming a global superpower, which is the world's largest democracy, I think respect for the fourth estate needs to start with the people who own and manage the organizations that report the news.
Thank you for that, Colin. The report addresses broadly, as we've heard before, broadly sort of 3 areas of safety concerns: physical safety, digital safety, and of course, mental health issues. So very briefly, I'd like to touch upon all 3. We've been talking about physical safety. Ishanidhi was talking about how things are in West Bengal, and West Bengal has been, not to say that there isn't pole violence in other parts of the country, but I grew up in Calcutta, and it was something that was so par for the course when we were growing up that it took us a long while to understand that this should not be normalized. Coming from a culture like that to come to a point where we are having these discussions freely, has taken decades, and through these decades, we've lost a lot. I wanted to, Ishanidhi, you spoke about the importance of guiding journalists. Especially, you spoke about this incident that if someone's trapped in a house that could be burnt down, he has access to seniors, he or she has access to seniors, he or she has access to lawyers, and so on and so forth. But Ashish brought up a very good point, that even before we get to that point where you're trapped or you're surrounded, there are so many smaller situations, right? In like Ashish said, that what happens if 3 people walk up to you and they say, show us your phone, or they start Googling you, or they start making verbal threats or calling you paid media. What is it that, or you see that a mob is gathering around? Should we have standard operating procedures? Should this be part of orientation when journalists join? And do you think that this is being done? The prevention part of it, the training and awareness part of it, do you think that it's being adequately done?
I don't think that is being adequately done in West Bengal. We have so many small channels and small websites now in West Bengal, and they are under attack from the establishment, no doubt about that. And as Dhania said, that there is a bravado that just go out and you have to do this story, you have to do this interview. So personally, I am being dubbed as a very conservative in the newsroom, because I always say that if there is a risk, don't go out. I had a brief stint with the BBC World Service Radio. And when we were trained there, in our training, it was jokingly said, but it was institutionalized, that nobody should die for radio. So I jokingly told my colleagues that nobody should die for newspaper. Your life is precious, your family is precious, so save that first. Then the news will come to you, and you will get the news. But don't risk your life that much. As Dhania has said, now, we are in a people situation. And during this campaign, we have that, experience. that big leaders, I repeat, big leaders from the dais, they, call the name of the specific journalists and specific organizations and target them. So you are in a situation, you are surrounded by the supporters of the ruling party or the opposition party, and the leader from the stage called your name or your organization name and said that they are against us. Don't read that newspaper, don't, see that channel. So what will do? So the mob there, the people there at once look at you, because if they are local reporters, everybody knows you. And we have, we have a network of stringers and contributors and retainers who are local. So a big network, and everybody knows them. So what to do then? We had this experience that often we had to text people that just come out of that crowd. Just silently come out if you can, because don't stay there. You don't have to cover the meeting anymore, just come out. Because you don't know what will happen. So that's the thing, the little things you have to keep in mind, that safety and security, in nowadays, the danger is always there. Our predecessors, our former reporters, they also, they experience the same thing more or less. But during, last 5 years, last 10 years, it has, increased. The attack on journalists, that may be physical attack or that may be verbal attack. So, what you feel is very, very dangerous. And you have to, there should be a proper training. We have to train the, local reporters mainly, that what to do and what not to do. So there should be, institutionalized training. We give them, we talk to them, we give them certain instructions over the phone. But as I gather from this, panel discussion, we should start a formal training about this. About the safety guidelines, what you have to follow and what to do.
आशीष जी, यही सवाल मैं आपसे भी करना चाहती थी कि ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल चेंज अधिकतर आसान नहीं होता, खासकर जितना बड़ा जगरनॉट होगा उतना ही मुश्किल होता है टू मेक इट टर्न अ कॉर्नर। एक तरफ जो बड़ी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है उनकी ये दिक्कत है, दूसरी तरफ जो बहुत ही छोटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है शायद उनके पास रिसोर्सेज भी ना हो इस तरह की ट्रेनिंग प्रोवाइड करने का। इन हालात के चलते ऐसी कुछ स्टेप्स आप बताएं जो आपको लगता है आसानी से ली जा सकती हैं, चाहे वो दे मे नॉट गो ऑल द वे, लेकिन वो फिर भी कुछ हद तक इन कंसर्न्स को एड्रेस कर सकती हैं।
देखिए, यहाँ पर ना बहुत सारी चीजें स्टेक पर है, और वो सबसे बड़ी चीज स्टेक पर है मीडिया के लिए ट्रस्ट और क्रेडिबिलिटी। अगर डरा हुआ मीडिया होगा तो कैसे क्रेडिबल होगा? तो ये मुझे लगता है कि एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन या फिर एक के भरोसे छोड़ने वाला काम नहीं है, इस पर लोगों को साथ आना पड़ेगा। हम लोग देखते हैं कि कई मीडिया ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, मीडिया के संगठन बने हुए हैं जो इन चीजों पर कर रहे हैं, लेकिन मुझे लगता है कुछ ज्यादा करने की जरूरत है। सबसे पहला कि जर्नलिस्ट को भरोसा होना चाहिए कि अगर मेरे साथ कुछ होता है तो मेरे लोग खड़े होंगे। अगर किसी जर्नलिस्ट के साथ ज्यादती होती है तो वी शुड हैव वेरी स्ट्रांग मीडिया सॉलिडारिटी होनी चाहिए, पीपल विल कम एंड स्टैंड फॉर देम। दूसरा ये होना चाहिए कि हमें उनको सपोर्ट दिलाने के अरेंजमेंट भी होने चाहिए कि भाई अगर आपको लीगल एड है तो उसके लिए प्रोविजन होगा, अगर आपको फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट की जरूरत पड़ती है किसी ऐसे हालात में तो हम उसके लिए कुछ करेंगे। तो आप ऐसे सेलेक्टिवली नहीं कर सकते हो कि सिर्फ मेरे जर्नलिस्ट के लिए कुछ खराब हुआ तो मैं वॉइस उठाऊंगा, दूसरे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए हुआ तो मैं नहीं करूंगा, ऐसे नहीं काम चलेगा। आई थिंक कि इतने बड़े ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हैं, हम लोग देख रहे हैं कि सीपीजे ने ये एफर्ट किया है, ऐसे और मीडिया को साथ आके एक कॉमन स्टैंड लेना चाहिए और इन चीजों पर ज्यादा एक्टिवली प्रोएक्टिवली चीजें करनी चाहिए, ताकि एक फ्रीलांसर भी उतना ही सेफ फील करे जितना एक बड़े मीडिया हाउस का जर्नलिस्ट सेफ फील कर सकता है। तो अगर हम लोग नहीं करेंगे ना तो कलेक्टिव लॉस होगा। आपका जर्नलिस्ट जा नहीं रहा है, ग्राउंड पे बात नहीं कर रहा है, वहां पर क्राउड के बीच में वो उसको सेफ्टी नहीं मिलती है, वो पॉलिटिशियन के अगेंस्ट खबर लिखने में अगर नहीं हिम्मत करेगा तो फिर जर्नलिज्म में नहीं बचेगा ना। तो आई थिंक हम लोग को बड़े स्टेप लेने चाहिए मिलके, ये एक रास्ता दिखता है।
आपने ये बात उठाई सॉलिडारिटी की, ये मैं आगे उठाने ही वाली थी। ईशानी दी ने भी बात की कि एक अगर प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस के अंदर किसी जर्नलिस्ट को, if one journalist is being singled or one media house is being singled and everyone starts looking at them. I remember I did an investigation for Tehelka when RTI activists being killed across the country. One thing that I'd found that at that point in time that there was so much solidarity and such a great network of RTI activists that if you killed an RTI activist, then 20 RTI activists would file the same RTI. And they had developed this as sort of a safety net mechanism within themselves, where that would become a deterrent. That if I go and kill this person, then people from different parts of the country who may not even be interested in this issue will pick up the RTI. They will find out what it is that he had filed. And that kind of solidarity, of course, we don't find amongst journalists. Part of it is psychological, part of it is perhaps a lack of, institutional coming together, but polarities are going up. There's so much of divide between languages and so on and so forth. Dhanya, I was wondering, you just recently, a bunch of news organizations came together to cover the state elections so wonderfully. It was perhaps the best coverage that we had of the state elections, at least in digital media. What can you say about the role that solidarity can play, and what can we do to increase this? Because clearly it is going to be beneficial to everybody across the board.
No, I really think that Indian media houses, the big ones and the small ones, have to move out of that thought process where, a story, a collaboration. I mean, a story is just one person's story. A story is a media organization story. That from that level itself, I think there has to be collaboration. And of course, see, for us, more than anything else, the collaboration is also a necessity. We are smaller organizations. We have to come together to cover something as big as the elections, because there is no way that we can cover it singularly, right? So it was born out of necessity, and also it was born out of a challenge that we can provide an alternative. But I think elections apart, there needs to be more solidarity between organizations, especially when we are facing an onslaught from the government, whether it is new laws, guidelines, etc. Organizations have to come together. But sadly, I think there is clearly a divide here. Indian media is very, very polarized now. Before when the case against NewsClick, for example, was registered, we saw many Indian TV anchors go on air and ask for the arrest of the editor Probir. They continue to call him all kinds of names. So we are seeing a clear divide in the Indian media, where one side is continuously egging the government to go arrest people from the other side, to take action, branding them as anti-national. So I think at one level, it is not possible. There cannot be solidarity between all the Indian media, but there are some sections of the media which can definitely have more solidarity. And I think one more thing that we perhaps missed out is on digital safety. It's very important during elections that we do speak to reporters about digital safety, not having backups on phone, talking to politicians on or whoever your sources are, even within your office, on apps which not like WhatsApp or a call, and those kind of basic things have to be told to reporters, freelancers, everyone, to please download these apps, to make calls only through this. So I think digital safety is another thing that we all have to focus on. And I have been a journalist only for 20 years. I mean, it's lesser than everyone compared here. But for the first time, I had to actually organize for DigiPub a training class for all journalists on what to do if you're arrested, or what to do if you're raided, and what to do if your device is taken by, or if an agency wants to take your device. We are at this point in this country where we have to have training classes for journalists for these kinds of things. So I think we need to have more of this. For example, when the income tax department came to my office for a raid, there was only one person in office that day, and he actually thought that they've come to take his Aadhaar card, because we never thought that there's an income tax raid coming. And he did not know how to respond to the question. So though we initially took that as a joke, now I understand that I have to tell people in office that if something like this happens in the future, what do you do? How do you react? Who do you call? And what do you tell them? So these are important conversations to have then and now with people in your organization.
No, absolutely, Dhanya. And I was going to come to, I know we have limited time, but I definitely wanted to come to digital safety next, because again, when we speak about digital safety, we are talking about such a multitude of issues. Enram sir mentioned Pegasus. We've been talking about phone hacking. We've been talking about, um, privacy issues. We've been talking about online abuse, harassment, training that leads, trolling that leads to self-censorship. I mean, this is just such a gamut of what can come your way. And of course, this links up to, not just um, practical safety concerns in terms of, somebody gaining access to what you're working on, who you're speaking to, and so on, and your records and so on, but also mental health issues. Because if you are subject to abuse, and of course, online violence is always gendered. It's it takes on a special connotation when it comes to women, when it comes to people from disadvantaged castes and communities. They are always more vulnerable. Obviously, we cannot address the entire gamut of what we talk about when we talk about digital safety. But I was wondering if, each of you, because you also, there's a lot in common between, all of our experiences, but there's also very particular instances of where Shanidhi is coming from, where Ashish is coming from, where you're coming from. So I thought that if I could just get a summary of what are the most pressing concerns, what are the most pressing questions that you are trying to address when it comes to digital safety in your own spheres, I think that would be a good start. Ishanidhi, if you could start, please.
Yeah, sure. Actually, coming to digital safety, I mean, my state, West Bengal, is now providing me with lots of examples. Because just last week, one of my colleagues from my sister organization, that is ABP Anand, the television channel, his house was raided by the local police. Allegation was regarding some, land issues or like that. Actually, they have some allegation against the promoter of that building. But his name was dragged into it. And to mention this, that particular reporter, he covers ED and CBI. So you understand. And so they raided his house for 5 hours. And they copied everything from his personal laptop and from pen drives. Copied everything that they cannot do, but they did it. So the matter is sub judice, so I can't discuss on that. But that is our concern. That is the real concern we are having now. That if somebody comes to your house, you are without guard, and they can take away everything. You can go to police. I mean, you could go to court, but that was too late. I mean, you can't go to court then and then, because you have to inform your office, and then the legal team will advise you, and that's a time-consuming process. So by that time, your legal team is ready. They are taking everything. I mean, every digital asset you have. So this thing, I was just going through this safety checklist, and this is very important. I mean, this digital safety kit. I mean, this is very, very, very important that I will share it with my colleagues, that how to keep our digital property safe. Because we have so personal and professional, we have contacts. We have our contacts on our phone. And that reporter, because he's covering ED and CBI, everything is there in his phone and his laptop. So that is the main concern we are having now. And this is election time, so anyone can, enter your house on pretext of something, on some allegations. And nowadays days, I want to add this, because some petty cases, even theft, then violation of modesty of woman, SC/ST Atrocity Prevention Act, everything is being charged against that reporter, against many reporters. I'm not talking about my house only. So you don't know if your write-up, if your report, TV report has angered any establishment, I mean, mainly police, you can be slapped with any kind of charges, any kind of charges. And on any day, any moment, police can enter your radio house. So we have been seeing this. This has been a very
No,
new development.
absolutely.
And every day we are getting legal notices, So digital safety is, I'm just thinking that I'll request the authority to, start some, as Dhania said, some digital safety classes, workshops, as we have done with legal workshops, to educate ourselves about the, legal things. So we have to, start these digital safety workshops.
Yeah, and to my mind, if these workshops can also be made widely available on YouTube for free, even independent journalists can then access them, even if they don't have organizational access. I mean, that could be one idea. But one aspect that I want to touch upon before, we have to end this, आशीष जी, आपने जैसा पहले कहा था कि डिजिटल सेफ्टी के कई पहलू हैं, हम इसी बारे में बात करते आ रहे हैं। चाहे एक तरफ ये हो सकता है कि आपका फोन ले लिया जाए, आप पे रेड हो, हमारे यहाँ जो इंस्टीट्यूशन है, रूल ऑफ लॉ हमारे यहाँ इतना स्ट्रांग है नहीं, तो कई बार इलीगल एक्शन सबसे पहले तो जो इन्फोर्समेंट एजेंसीज है वही लेती हैं। उनके शायद राइट में ना हो कि आपका फोन सीज कर लिया जाए, या उनके पास करेक्ट वारंट ना हो, बट दे विल डू व्हाट दे वांट टू डू, एंड दैट्स हाउ थिंग्स हैव बीन एंड दे आर। इसका एक गहरा प्रभाव सेल्फ सेंसरशिप के तौर पे भी महसूस किया जा सकता है, मानसिक तनाव या मानसिक स्वास्थ्य पे भी इसका प्रभाव पड़ सकता है। हम we are in a state where we are still discussing that we're still not being able to have conversations about physical safety in newsrooms, and in a state like this, mental health issues obviously feel like they're so far behind in terms of priority. But जैसा आप कहते आ रहे हैं कि if journalists have to do what they are supposed to do, which is and courageous coverage, then they need to feel safe, not just be safe. And this feel safe is what is linked to mental health. तो इसके बारे में आपके खुद के न्यूज रूम के साथ क्या अनुभव रहे हैं और क्या किया जा सकता है, इस पे अगर आप थोड़ी चर्चा करें।
जी, तो जैसा ईशानी जी और धन्या जी ने बताया ना, वो एकदम अलग एक्सट्रीम कंडीशंस है, लेकिन इसकी बियॉन्ड भी बहुत कुछ होता है। देखिए, लोग डिजिटली एक्सपोज्ड हैं और उनके साथ क्या हो रहा है हमें पता नहीं है। देखिए, जैसे कहते हैं ना, नॉर्थ इंडिया में बोलते हैं लड़के रोते नहीं है, बॉयज डोंट क्राई, ऐसा बोला जाता है बचपन से। ऐसे जर्नलिस्ट के लिए भी लोग एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि यार ट्रोलिंग होगी तो सही लेगा, है ना, और डिजिटली एक्सपोज उसके होने का पार्ट ही है। लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है, कई बार वो somebody make a मिस्टेक या कोई गलत ऐसा कुछ हो जाता है और सोशल मीडिया में ट्रोलिंग उसकी बहुत ज्यादा हो जाती है, तो आपको पता नहीं चलता है। इट अफेक्ट्स देम वेरी डीपली, और वो लोग उसको एक्सप्रेस भी नहीं करते हैं, उसके बारे में बात भी नहीं करते हैं। और इवन सपोज किसी ने कोई ऐसी न्यूज करी जो दूसरे विचारधारा के लोगों को पसंद नहीं आ रही है और वो उसको सोशल मीडिया पर टारगेट कर रहे हैं। और भी तरह से, जैसे हमारी रिपोर्टर का नाम पूनम पांडे है, और पूनम पांडे नाम से एक एक्ट्रेस भी है, तो लोग उनको नाम की वजह से ट्रोल करने लगते हैं। तो ऐसी चीजें जर्नलिस्टों के साथ होती हैं क्योंकि उनका डिजिटल एक्सपोजर बहुत ज्यादा है और आम लोगों से, और चूंकि ब्रेव होना है ना, तो वो बोलते भी नहीं है। मुझे लगता है हमें अपने ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के अंदर लोगों के साथ ऐसी चीजों पर बात करने की जरूरत है, और ये उनके एज एन इंडिविजुअल भी कैसे अफेक्ट कर रहा है, इससे बहुत मतलब जर्नलिस्ट में एक तो एक्सट्रीम कंडीशन है कि आप किसी बहुत ही चीजों को फेस कर रहे हैं, लेकिन ये छोटी छोटी चीजें हैं जो लोगों को प्रभावित कर रही है, और इस पर हमें कुछ करने की जरूरत है। बातचीत तो शुरू होनी चाहिए, कम से कम वर्कशॉप्स हो, काउंसलिंग हो, तो उन चीजों पर हमें आगे बढ़ना चाहिए।
I want you to just come in with some last thoughts here, Dhanya, before I take it to Colin to conclude. We've all been trolled online, and Ashish is so right that the expectation is that everyone's trolled. What's the big deal? Why are you crying about it? You just want attention. Those are the kind of remarks that one has heard when one is like, I am being issued rape threats, and there's a sort of like, oh, what's new? This one got more, or that kind of thing. And of course, he was talking about Poonam Pandey being mocked for her name. I've seen women journalists be mocked for the way they look, what they're wearing. It's endless. The kind of hate, abuse, and violence that can come at you. I wonder how your own understanding of trolling, as someone who's been brutally at the receiving end of it, and what our response should be to it, has evolved.
So a couple of things, Pragya. One is that the harassment online, I don't think we can even use the word trolling anymore. It is pure harassment. I think we have to be we have to first just accept that it is a problem. It is a problem. It is not something that we can wish away. It is a problem that impacts our colleagues. I have a lot of young colleagues. In fact, there is one particular young colleague I have. Whenever she writes anything, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who come to abuse her. We joke about it saying that she's a magnet for these people, but the point is there are times I ask her, are you okay? This has to be asked to people because it is becoming a problem. I know people have disturbed sleep patterns. They lose their confidence. They self-censor themselves. They do not want to tweet out stories. I know I do not tweet out stories. I do not write certain things because I am really tired of the harassment cycle. And forget what is happening on social media. There is absolutely no way to actually control it. We tell, when I realize that the news minute is going through a huge, let's say, Twitter attack, I tell my colleagues, do not look at replies. Mute the entire day, post and go away, because I understand there is a cycle of trolling going on, or harassment going on, and it really impacts them. So I tell them, when I tag people on controversial stories, I tell them, please mute that thread, because the moment I tag them, the harassment is going to be many times more than just their tweet. So these are things we have to continuously convey. And I just want to add here that social media is actually becoming the least of the problems. There are lots of right-wing websites now, which now have gotten into a habit of using pictures. I can't even say what kind of pictures in this meeting, but certain kind of pictures of women journalists, uh, they use only those pictures. For example, if they are going to report about this seminar, there'll be one screenshot they will take from this, which will have a certain a face captured, and then they will use that, and then all the abuses will be on that. So imagine, this is not even like social media. This story is up on the internet forever and ever. I can tell you 2 or 3 websites which have my stories every day, or at least every week, with that particular picture. They always freeze it like that. And the kind of harassment which follows beneath that picture or beneath that story. So it's in different ways that these things are happening now. Sometimes phone numbers are getting leaked, and then you're just getting calls, you're getting messages. But for young people in newsrooms, social media harassment is really impacting them. And I understand that sometimes people in my newsroom will come and say, but should I write the other side of the story? But should I not write this? Because they're really scared of what reactions will come to their story. And we have to speak to them, mute, block, do whatever you can, use all the tools that are available on social media. But it is important that they understand that this cannot impact, and it really does also have a bearing on people's mental health. So that's another thing to be discussed. I know from my own example that I really used to lose my sleep. My eyelids used to flutter in the night when I was very, very worried. I had a bunch of friends with whom I used to discuss this because they also had similar problems. That's when I realized that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to not feel good about this harassment. It's okay to feel down. And when I started talking to those people, I got some relief. So I tell people in my newsroom the same thing. If you can't talk to me, it's fine. Find your own group. Tell them what your troubles are.
This is so vital. Colin, I'll come to you. I'll bring a bunch of questions to you, all together. We've spoken about physical safety, digital safety, and mental health concerns. You have, you've been an observer of journalism practices and challenges in India, but also, the rest of the world because of your work with CPJ. I was wondering if you could share some insights, some best practices, some sort of mechanisms to counter the threats that we face today that have been developed globally that we could also perhaps think about adapting to Indian conditions and implementing here.
Start off by saying I'm quite optimistic hearing this panel about the measures that they're taking. Tanya and Ishani talking about digital safety training. That's a really good sign for Indian journalists. Outside, say in Europe and America, the safety culture is more enhanced than in India, but not by much. Okay, it's not like Europeans and Americans know how to do safety automatically. But it's about willpower. And if the news leaders are willing to stand up and say, we will not let our people go into the fray unarmed, uninformed, unprepared. That's a very good step. And I don't want to normalize the risks in India because the risks are huge. And you can be overwhelmed by them because they're so frightening and so scary. But the first step starts with training. It starts with institutional awareness that there is risk and that it's not acceptable for journalists to operate in this environment. And I would say once you have that understanding from both management and journalists on the beat, the tactical steps of training and home security and physical security and risk assessment, which is key. Risk, understanding what the risks are and then mitigating them. Those tactical things fall into place automatically. But it's this culture, as you started the conversation about, that is vital. So I'm encouraged by hearing the panelists on this call, because for many years, as I've been observing Indian journalists, they said, oh, training safety is for other people, it's for other countries, it's not for us. We just go out and we're gung-ho and we go do these things. So, what India needs are lighthouses like yourselves who shine a light and say, this is what we're going to do about it. And so I'm actually quite optimistic, which I didn't think I would be when I came on this panel.
Well, Lighthouses is correct. It's been very inspiring, really, to talk to all of you. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for showing the way. If we had more leaders like yourselves, and of course, more visionaries like Enram, sir, then we would be in a much better place. But I also want to say that one is very grateful to CPJ for initiating these conversations. Conversations spark ideas, they spark hope, they spark normalization of safety concerns. And I really wish I can say this, that 20 years ago, when I had started out as a journalist, I wish I had access to a conversation like this on YouTube, and it would have enormously helped me. So with that thought in mind, I hope this contributes somewhere to the discourse. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you so much, Pragya, and thank you, everyone. I mean, I'm personally, I've been doing this job for the last 6 years, and much like Colin, most of the conversation has really been with the leadership level. And now to hear leaders of the industry themselves, being mindful of the challenges and willing to kind of work on, my favorite phrase is always internal safety mechanism. I keep stressing on that. Dhanya can bear to that. Many a times I brought it up with her. So it's really great to hear that. And I would like to also point out that CPJ has a lot of options where we do individual counseling with journalists. We do offer safety advisories to individual journalists as well as to newsrooms. We did one when Colin was in Chennai, and Mr. Enram was very kind enough to organize one with the Hindu newsroom. And we are more than happy to kind of collaborate with other newsrooms. These are pro bono services which CPJ offers across board. So feel free to reach out to us, and we will be more than happy to work with you. Thank you so much, everyone, and special thanks to the Hindu news group for telecasting this live, and to Oijo for moderating as well as coordinating with the speakers and the translation. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.